Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Ryan Wrobel, the Managing Partner of Wrobel Company LLP Attorneys at Law here in Belize City. We have a guest from San Pedro today, Joe Mendizabal, who is a friend of the office, and we quite work together quite often these days as well. You're a real estate agent with Keller Williams.
Absolutely.
Out there on the island, and we're happy to have you here today. Wanted to ask you some questions, Joe, about your experience, your Belizean experience, as well as kind of delve into your area of expertise, asking about real estate market out there and what have you. But at first, I would say, I want to know what your Belizean story is. Where are you from? What are you doing here in Belize? What's the biggest changes you've seen in the country? That kind of thing. Get into some fun stuff after that. But what's your story, Joe?
My story starts off in 1970. Well, my story starts off in 1997. That's the year I was born. For you guys who don't know how to make maths quickly, that's 27 years old. But my Belize story. I was born in Guatemala City to both Guatemalan parents. My dad has been a merchant all his life, buy and sell products, items. For a long while he did jewelry, and he immigrated to Belize, quite honestly, by accident.
Okay, interesting.
He tells me this story that he was you've been to the western border, right?
Yeah, for
You
sure,
see
man.
how informal that can
Yes.
be. I mean, now it's a lot more.
It's grown quite a bit over the years. Yeah.
But before it was so informal, he says people would be walking back and forth,
Okay.
and nobody would give a damn about what was going on.
How
So
interesting.
he remembers selling his silver jewelry in Melchor, which is the town right after at the border, physical border. And he remembers going, and it was a bad day of sales for him. He figured, he said, man, I thought this because being a border town would have a lot more money going on. And he remembers walking across from the Guatemalan border into the no man's land that they call. And he says he offered to this lady who, from the get-go, he figured had a completely different accent than what the Guatemalan accent is. And he mentioned that he gave her a price for a jewelry, and she paid it without even hesitating. And she actually bought more.
Okay.
So he remembers saying, this is fun. This is fun, because you're coming from a place where people are trying to budge you on a price and all that stuff. So he asked her, where are you from? And she says, oh, I'm from San Ignacio. And she's like, oh, it's then he explained that it's like 15 minutes from Benque and all that stuff. So he decided to cross the border.
Okay.
He said, let me try my luck. So he went from San Ignacio, and then he made a killing in San Ignacio. I don't remember if he says he sold in one day what he probably would have sold in Guatemala in a week.
Wow.
And when he realized, obviously, we're business people, when he realized that it was selling, he actually raised up the price, and people were still paying for it.
Okay.
So he's like, man, this is jackpot. And he had been all over Guatemala selling jewelry back then.
Mm-hmm.
So slowly but surely he came, and he went from San Ignacio, then he went to Belmopan. Belmopan wasn't so good. Then he said, you know what? He decided to come to Belize. Belize was not so that happening. So he says, you know what? I should go back to San Ignacio. San Ignacio was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But he says right after when he was walking over the bridge, what's the name of this bridge here?
Hawksworth
Hawksworth,
Bridge
the one
in
swing
Kyle?
bridge?
Yep.
Yeah.
No, right here in the
this one
city.
here.
Oh, Swing Bridge.
Swing
Yeah,
bridge,
Swing
yeah. The swing bridge right here. He says he saw the boat leaving with people.
Huh.
And he looked at it, and he says, and he looked at it, and then someone was passing. He says, where are those boats going? And he mentions that the person said, oh, a la isla, the island.
Sure.
And he says, la isla, le dice. See, and then he mentions that he asked the guy, where's la isla? Oh yeah, turistas. He says, a light bulb moment,
Yeah.
So he says he caught the last boat, and that was when it was way back in the day when it was called something else. He says he caught the last boat to San Pedro, and he checked into the first hotel he saw, which was the Conch Inn Hotel. But just to plug in, it's for sale. We have it for
Sheldon,
sale.
indeed.
Conch
Yeah,
Sheldon.
yeah, absolutely.
It's one of the oldest hotels in the island, and it's a cute hotel. So if you want, reach out, right? But anyways, after my pitch, so he stayed in there, and he remembers his first sale in San Pedro, and then at that point he felt more confident because he felt like he knew the country a little bit more to take out his gold jewelry.
All right.
Here in Guatemala, very sketchy. You just don't go showing
So
that you have gold anywhere.
Yeah.
So he usually would show silver, and then if he felt like the person had the income or the money or wasn't would end
Once
up
he got some
robbing
kind of
him or
faith
something,
and trust in them,
he would take out his jewelry stuff. So
Okay.
his gold stuff. So he says he remembers doing it at the Pelican Cafe. There was not Pelican Cafe, but if you've been in downtown San Pedro, you've probably seen it. And he remembers offering to this lady, and he remembers this lady buying a couple much items from him, and he remembers getting paid in 100 US.
Wow.
That was his first time ever seeing a US dollar.
Okay, how interesting.
So he remembers saying that the total for this bill was about right around 300 Belize, which back then was a lot of money.
Sure.
I mean, still is a lot of money.
It is.
But he says he got paid with 100 US and he had no clue what it was. So he stood there and the lady said, "It's this amount, right?" And he says, "Yes." And then the lady told him, "Yes, because it's 2 to 1 exchange, so it's 400." Then, oh yes, I knew. It's just disculpa, you know. He said, "Sorry."
Yeah.
So he went there, and then that's how he found San Pedro.
Okay.
That was about 35 years ago. So that was way before I was even born.
Okay.
After that, a couple years forward, he started ditching Guatemala and coming all the way to Belize, you know, making his business happen and so forth. Then I was born, and you know, my parents decided, you know, let's come for a vacation. They came. My dad, I think he had this plan all along. He said, you know what, we should move here. My mom said, you know what, let's move here. Me and my brother said, heck no, we don't want to move here because we had our lives back in Guatemala.
How old were you at that time?
When my parents decided to live here, move here, start the exploration process, I was about 6 years old.
Okay.
And I remember parts of it and the more vivid parts of it. And that's why when I speak with buyers that are wanting to move down here, I can relate to their search. I mean, obviously at that point I didn't have the decision to choose where or what or, you know, how it would go. But I remember my parents going through that process of, we came, we stayed a couple months in San Ignacio, we stayed a couple weeks in Belmopan with some family. Then we stayed sometime in Orange Rock, and then we stayed sometime in Corozal, and then we stayed sometime in San Pedro.
All right.
And because obviously of cost of living and accessibility to the island, we decided to go with Corozal. It was a complete change of lifestyle. It was a complete change of culture. It was a complete change of food. For the first couple of years that we were here, my mom wanted to leave about 3 different times, and we were happy to help her pack our bags. We were ready to go because if you, you know, Guatemala and Belize, completely different cultures, completely different ways of speaking, completely different ways of acting, completely different ways of food. And obviously, when you come here and you don't have any family members, it's a lot more harder.
It's tough, man. It's really difficult. Yeah.
So that's basically my story here, and then, you know, spent some time in Corozal, San Pedro, and until when the first year of high school that I decided to move in San Pedro. Then I've been in San Pedro ever since.
Excellent. I love that story. I love your dad's story. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's really great. Happy to have you here, and happy to know you. Maybe some fun stuff. I mean, Belize. What's your favorite food? What's your favorite drink here in Belize?
I'll tell you, and this is a funny thing. My favorite food. Belize has such a rich quantity and options of food that you can try. But my absolute favorite would have to be the relleno.
Okay.
Relleno. So for viewers who might not be familiar, relleno is a black soup. As if you've had a chicken soup, but it's kind of a chicken-based soup, but with the recado, which is the seasoning. Instead of it being like the stewed chicken that you might have tasted here, it's actually black. So it has a bit more of a, for some folks, it has more of a like a pepper pepper spicy flavor to it. Now I can tell you that the relleno compared to the black soup, because there's the black soup and then there's the
Black
relleno.
pepper,
That the relleno has the beef with the egg made into like a what would be something?
Yeah, dumpling.
Yeah, kind of like a dumpling. So that is my absolute favorite dish.
It's good stuff. I agree. I love that too. Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about a drink? Got a favorite drink here in Belize?
I no longer drink. I have about 10 months that I've been sober.
Excellent.
But back when I did, it was the 5 barrel from the Traveler's Rum
Okay.
or the extra mature from the Old Masters. Any of those two in a campechana form, which is just soda for the hangover instead of just rum and coke and the hangover next day.
You know, I don't know if a lot of our viewers know, but we have some great rums in Belize, so I agree with you. What about what we call a soft drink? Not necessarily alcoholic beverage. Any favorite type of juice or any other drink like that?
I can tell you that the fact that we are a tropical country and we have access to a lot of tropical fruits, I love accessing watermelon and just basically having watermelon juice, half with soda and a little lime wedge, and that's been my to-go drink now that I'm sober.
I think that is a luxury that we are afforded here in Belize.
And
fresh
cheap.
juice, and it's cheap. And you know, lime juice, watermelon juice, tamarind juice, and so many juices, right?
Yes.
That's a favorite of mine. So we share that. You know, you told us a little bit about your story, and that was fantastic. Thanks for that. What about changes that you've seen in Belize over the years? What are the major changes that you've seen?
It's been significant, especially with an island like San Pedro. Obviously, the number of people, population, infrastructure in San Pedro compared to when I first started. Giving you a big example, when I first reached and visited San Pedro, all the roads were dirt,
sand indeed.
Now, at least for the main parts, everything is concrete and paved, and you know there's a lot more development and a lot more things going on, and for other main towns too as well, like San Ignacio, Placencia.
Absolutely.
Have seen significant
I can speak
development.
on right here in Belize City. When I first moved to Belize many years ago, the streets were paved, except they were full of potholes. It was very difficult to drive around and preserve your vehicle or the suspension. And now we're here in 2024 with concrete roads and smooth, and it is vastly different. So infrastructure indeed has really improved during my time. It sounds like your time as well.
You know, one thing that you just mentioned when you said one thing that came to my mind just now that you mentioned roads was when I first started coming to Belize City, because again, like I mentioned, my dad had always been a merchant, so he has also sold roses for Valentine's and Mother's Day here in Belize. And I remember first coming to Belize and exploring it with him. There were a lot more those old vintage taxis. You remember?
I remember the vintage taxis and Mercedes-Benz, right? The diesel Mercedes-Benz were a lot of them. Yeah.
You don't
I
see
like
them.
them. You don't see them again. I think we're getting to that point where they've been retired.
Yeah,
I absolutely. I know what you mean.
Absolutely.
The turbo diesels, the Mercedes-Benz classics.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for sharing the changes that you've seen. How about this? In Belize, in San Pedro, or the country as a whole, what are some of the places that you like to visit, things you like to do? Share something with our viewers that they want to check out.
Well, I definitely think Belize has so much to offer, and the ability that you can just travel 1 or 2 hours and be in a completely different atmosphere. For example, right now, after recording, I'm going to San Ignacio for a week.
Excellent.
And I've needed this vacation from San Pedro because it's just been so overwhelming being in San Pedro. And definitely my go-to place in Belize outside of San Pedro, don't get me wrong, I love my island, but it's definitely San Ignacio. It's actually one of the places I hope I can afford to retire. You know, a nice riverside home. Hey.
Nice and green, hills, beautiful, a little bit cooler than out here on the coastal side. San Ignacio is great. I love Cayo as well.